Hi, you can see I'm in a different place. I'm house sitting in New Orleans. I've been in New Orleans for 3 weeks total. I've done 2 house sits so far. So I thought this would be a good time to tell you about the 10 tools that I use to book and to enjoy my house sits. Things that I use to make myself more comfortable while I'm in a strange city, in a strange house. Of course, I am linking to these tools in the description, but stick around to the end of the video because I am just bundling them together into a house sitter toolkit, which I am giving to you. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Stephanie Perry and I'm a year-round house sitter. I help Black women take a career break to travel on a budget. If this sounds good to you, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and make sure that you ring the notification bell. Turn on notifications so that you will be notified when I post a new video. Welcome. Okay, we'll get right into it. What 10 tools am I using as a house sitter to book house sits and to enjoy the house sits, to have fun while I'm here? Number 1 should be no surprise to you. Number 1 is Trusted House Sitters. I'm using the Trusted House Sitters app to book house sits. I've done a lot of videos talking about house sitting, and in each one of those videos I've talked about Trusted House Sitters because they are the bomb. They are who you want to house sit through when you're getting started. Trusted House Sitters is a website where people who need a house sitter and house sitters meet each other. Pretty simple. They're international. They have house sits all over the world, including right here in the United States. I booked these 2 house sits in New Orleans through Trusted House Sitters. One of them I booked months ago before the global pandemic. And then once I found out that the client was actually going on her road trip, I booked a second house sit so that I could be here longer, so that I could spend more time here in New Orleans. And it's been a wonderful experience. If you're following me on Instagram, then you know that it's a beautiful house. And this house sit is 2 cats only. My first house sit was 2 dogs. That was for 1 week, and I had to walk dogs in the humidity and the thunderstorms, and it was still a great house sit. But this one is 2 cats only, and life is breezy, except that there's a raccoon who comes to the back door to to eat the food that's left out. But that's another story. My Instagram is @Vacarious if you want to peep in on the shenanigans. But Trusted House Sitters is the #1 house sitter tool or website or app. My affiliate link to Trusted House Sitters is in the House Sitter Toolkit, as well as the actual email that I send to clients, the actual pitch email that I send that helps me book new house sits. The template to that letter is in the House Sitter Toolkit. So that's kind of like a bonus tool. Instead of 10 tools, you're getting 11 because you're also getting the template. Speaking of which, a good number of you guys signed up for your Trusted House Sitters memberships during my birthday sale. So many of you, in fact, that Trusted House Sitters contacted me directly and was like, thank you. I'm like, you're welcome. But really, guys, I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you starting your house sitting journey. I want you to actually do it. Don't just let the membership sit there. Get your money's worth. This toolkit will help you with that, and I'm here to help you with that. Let's go. Let's get started. Let's see the world, or at least like the country for now. All right, so the next tools that I use as a house sitter to navigate a new place are Metro and rideshare apps. Google Maps is good for most metro systems. Like Google Maps will get you where you want to go in a lot of the world using public transportation. But City Mapper is just a little bit better. City Mapper has just a little bit of an edge on Google Maps. City Mapper is now my favorite public transportation app. My house sitting client in Amsterdam actually put me onto it. She was like, Google Maps isn't quite as reliable here, so get City Mapper. I did, and I've been using it ever since for public transportation information. Here in New Orleans, I've been using Lyft quite a lot. I got here a few days before 4th of July, before the weekend, and I thought that Lyft would be giving discounts because sometimes during holidays they give ride discounts. They didn't this time, but I still have been using it to get around New Orleans. For a couple of days, my 2 house sits overlapped. So I had to leave the house with the dogs, come check on the cats once a day, and then go back to the house sit with the dogs. And I would walk because they're kind of like within walking distance. So I would walk here, I would get here, I'd be super sweaty, and then I'd be like, no, I'm taking a Lyft back. But Lyft is just a good way to get around in a lot of the world. You're probably familiar with Uber and Lyft already. If you're not already using Lyft, in the House Sitter Toolkit, there's a coupon for $5 off of your first ride. And then I want to mention a rideshare app that I'm not using in New Orleans, but that I have used in other parts of the world. BlaBlaCar is a rideshare app for long distance travel. BlaBlaCar is a rideshare app for like if you want to go to another town or another city. I used it in Mexico to go from Tequila, the town, which is just north of Guadalajara, over to the beach, which was San Francisco. And it cost me, I think, 75% of what the bus would cost, right? So it was a little cheaper than taking the bus. In Mexico, buses are modern and convenient and comfortable, and they give you a meal, like a little sandwich or something on the bus, but that means that they're not super cheap. So I used BlaBlaCar some of the time. BlaBlaCar is also popular in Europe. When I was in Vietnam, I met Jazz from Chicago who told me about BlaBlaCar, and she used it to get around Europe, to hitch rides with people all over Europe. So they're popular in a lot of places, but not here in the US. But if you're house sitting in a place with BlaBlaCar and you want to go to another town, move to your next house sit or move to your next, fun vacation spot, check out BlaBlaCar. Sometimes when you get to a house sit, there's some food or some supplies in the kitchen to keep you for the first couple of days or at least the first couple of meals, but not always. It depends on what you guys agree to. I got to New Orleans by taking my first pandemic era flight. I definitely didn't want to go to the grocery store, and I didn't want to bother the client with going to the grocery store because she was in the middle of packing for her own trip. So I ordered from Instacart. Instacart is groceries delivered to your door, a house sitter's dream. With my link, you can get $10 off your first order with Instacart. And I've got coupons for Grubhub and DoorDash. Yes, I've used each one of these during my 3 weeks in New Orleans. I ate a lot of food. I'm down here, a lot of the restaurants are delivery or takeout only. I could walk to some of these restaurants and do takeout and bring the food back, but it's a zillion degrees outside and it's very humid. So boom, DoorDash. I have the Dash Pass with DoorDash. That's how often I use it, and it's worth it. Okay, now I'm gonna move into some tools and some apps that I'm not using this time because I'm on a domestic house sit, but that I do use when I have an international house sit. The first one is xe.com. It's a currency conversion app. It just makes your life so much easier when you know how much you're spending for something. Without xe.com, I would be out here flailing. I do a lot of house sitting in Mexico, which is really easy. Mexico's conversion is like 100 pesos is around $5. No sweat. But in some places, I have no clue. During my grown-up gap year, I spent like a week or two in Budapest and Serbia. I don't know that I ever knew what those conversion rates were. Like it wasn't really worth my time to look them up. I was only going to be there for a few days. I'm only eating a few meals. I'm like, whatever, just get the app and let the app do the conversions for me. I don't want to have to learn how to figure this out on my own. It's a lifesaver and a money saver, like for real. Speaking of money savers, if your bank charges you a foreign transaction fee, this next tool is for you. Most US banks charge a 3% foreign transaction fee. Every time you take money out of the ATM, every time you use your card, your debit or your credit card in a restaurant, every flight, every bus ticket, every transaction has an extra 3% fee tacked onto it. For a house sitter, whether you're traveling for 4 days or 4 months, that's a lot of money. So first check to see if your bank is charging you a foreign transaction fee. I bank with USAA, they don't charge me a foreign transaction fee, okay? But if your bank does, I recommend that you get a new account for travel that you use when you're out of the country. Charles Schwab is very popular with travelers. You can open an account online, no foreign transaction fees, and it's easy to use the card in international ATMs. Chime is a new online bank that also does not charge a foreign transaction fee. I've never used Chime, and I've never talked to anyone to find out if they had difficulty using a Chime bank card in foreign ATMs. I don't know for sure if Chime is on a network where you could use it internationally. So if you bank with Chime, please let me know. Let me know what your experience has been. Let us know down in the comments. But there are a couple of options so that you can save that fee. Another money drain is international data charges. If your phone plan charges you for international data or calls, then get Google Fi. Like just switch to Google Fi. Google Fi is just a phone service provider and network or whatever. I'm not real good with the lingo, but they're my SIM card. So Google Fi is the SIM card that I have in my phone right now. I came back from Mexico and I thought I was only going to be here for 2 months. So my plan was just to keep renewing my Mexico SIM card. It's only $10 a month, and I could renew it, I thought, from the US because you can use it in the US. But turns out when I got here, I wasn't using a VPN, so they knew that I wasn't in Mexico anymore, and I couldn't renew my service for the next month. So then for like 2 months, I was being stubborn and I was Wi-Fi only. But then I decided to go ahead and restart or like renew my Google Fi SIM card. I used Google Fi once before. I used it last winter when I came back from Mexico and I house sat in San Francisco, and then I went over to London. I wanted a SIM card that I could use in San Francisco and London and Amsterdam. And I did, worked wonderfully, no issues, no problems, no concerns. Google Fi is $20 a month for calls and texting, plus $10 a month for 1 gig of data, right? And then $10 a month for each additional gigabyte of data up to the max. I think the max that they'll charge you it's either $60 or $80 a month. That's the max. After that, you're unlimited or whatever. I'm not good with the data. I have a link to Google Fi. It's also a coupon code so that you will get, what is it? I think it's $20 off of your first month's bill. I'm pretty sure. Google Fi works in 200 countries. So here's when you need an international SIM card like Google Fi. Okay. If you're charging to places where the phone service is more expensive than that, like in Mexico, I get phone service, texts, and 2 gigs of data for $10 a month, right? With Google Fi, 2 gigs of data, plus that would be $40 a month. So in Mexico, I did just switch it out to my Mexico SIM card. In South Africa and in Australia, I paid more like $60 or $70 a month for 2 gigs of data plus, phone and texts. So if I had had my Google Fi SIM card back then, I just would have stuck with Google Fi. They work there. It's cheaper than what they're offering. Stick with them, okay? But even if Google Fi is a little more expensive in some places, I would still keep it if I needed to have the same phone number. Because when I go to Mexico and I put that SIM card in, I have a Mexican phone number with a Mexican country code and a, Mexican phone number. You all know what a phone number is. So if for work purposes or for personal reasons, if I needed to keep the same phone number, then I would just stick with Google Fi. If I didn't need to keep the same phone number, which I don't, then I would switch out the card if I went to a country where phone service was cheaper. I feel like I'm making this more complicated than it is. But if your phone service is not international and you want an international plan, Google Fi has worked wonderfully for me. Okay, so let's talk about some tools that I use for safety when I'm house sitting internationally. Number 1 is my travel medical insurance, which I have through World Nomads. I've done a whole video on travel medical insurance. If you haven't watched that, click up here. I'm not talking about lost luggage insurance. I'm not talking about flight protection. I'm talking about insurance that covers you in the event that you need to be hospitalized out of the country or medically evacuated. It's important, you need it. As Danica Nelson said, we interviewed Danica in our 12 Days of Career Breaks videos. And she said, if you can't afford travel medical insurance, you can't afford to travel. It's that important. Okay, another safety tool that I use is the U.S. State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. When I'm house sitting in another country, I log on to the State Department's website and I let them know this is where I am. This is my address in this place. In the event of some sort of natural disaster or like emergency situation, the State Department knows that I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm here and this is where you can find me. Okay, so with this next tool, you're going to find out that I'm a total fraud, and here's why. This next tool that international house sitters should use when they're house sitting is an international driving permit, but I don't have an international driving permit, but you should definitely get one. A lot of house sits let you use the car, especially if they're out of the city, if they're away from public transportation and away from like Uber and Lyft. Sometimes they'll let you use their car, and you should really have an international driving permit in the event that you get pulled over by police when you're driving their car or a rental car or somebody's borrowed car or whatever. I have been pulled over out of the US and I have not had an international driving permit. I've had no problems. The rental car agency, Hertz in South Africa, paid my ticket and then charged me for it. So that's what happened there. In Australia, nothing came of being pulled over without something to prove that I was allowed to drive in Australia. I showed them my US driver's license and they were like, like you would have thought it wasn't in English. I'm like, you speak English? This is in English, you know. But you know, like it looks like, you know, nothing to them. It doesn't look anything like their driver's license. So like, why would they care? So I've told you that I don't follow this rule, but you really should. Like it's the responsible thing to do. And an international driving permit from AAA is something like $30. I don't have one, not because it's expensive or it's a hassle. I don't have one just because. All right, so maybe you guys can hold me accountable and I will get one very soon. I don't know, I don't want to make any promises. Okay, I haven't been counting and I think we may be well over 10 at this point. I don't know, I may have to retitle this video. But okay, next tools that I use as a house sitter. Hostel World in between house sits, you know that I believe in staying in hostel dorm rooms when I don't want to pay, you know, real money to stay someplace. Hostel World is my go-to. And of course, Airbnb. I have a coupon in the toolkit for $20 off your first Airbnb stay and $15 off your first Airbnb experience. And they're doing virtual experiences. So if you want to do like a virtual cooking lesson and pretend that you're traveling during pandemic times, you can do that. Go ahead and get your Airbnb experience coupon in my toolkit and go crazy. But I often Airbnb in between house sits. I usually know when I'm going to have like a lag time in between house sits. Sometimes I try to book something in the middle, and sometimes I don't. I just leave myself with some empty space. That's the pleasure of house sitting in inexpensive cities. I like to pick places where I know that I'm free to be there and house sit or not house sit. You know, if something falls through, I don't feel like I'm going to be in financial ruin if I have to pay for my own place to stay. I have a list for you of 50 cities where you can Airbnb for $500 per month. This list is what I use to decide like where do I want to go and where do I not want to go. It's a wonderful starting point whether you're talking about looking for house sits or just like travel in general. Again, that's in the toolkit. This house sitter's toolkit is packed full of good stuff. All right, so those are the tools that I use as a house sitter to help me book and enjoy house sits, whether they're domestic or international. Get your toolkit. The link is in the description. I should know the link, but I don't. This house sit came with a fully stocked bar and a help yourself note. So I've had some drinks. I want to say the link is housesit.vicarious.com/toolkit. If it's not, just click the link in the description, okay? All right, leave questions in the comments as always. I hope you're doing well and I will see you next time. Bye.
Oh no. Oh